Hello, everyone, and welcome to Latinas in Engineering. My name is Chris Flores. I am a senior engineer at Lob in San Francisco, and I am so excited to speak with our panelists today. I've already spoken with them a bit before, but I can assure you, you are going to enjoy every single thing they have to say. I was just totally inspired as we prep for this. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce them, and then they will give a brief introduction about themselves. Mika, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hello, my name is Mika. I am born and raised from Chicago and still here. And I am a senior software engineer at the Democratic National Committee at the DNC. The team I'm on, the voting services team, manages a lot of different kinds of products, but probably our best known one is I Will Vote, iwillvote.com. So if you see anything about that in a debate or in social media, that is the teams that I'm on, that's our work. Not just the front end application, but the data and services that power this central repository for voter information and voter education and resourcing. Before that, I was doing a lot of work in marketing. I was building lead generating apps for Fortune 500 companies. I had spent a little bit of time trying to figure out what it is I wanted to do. I did know that I wanted to work in tech. And I actually am a little bit more self-taught than not. I definitely had kind of come into becoming an engineer a little bit sideways, starting out with design and strategy. And from there, realizing that the problems that I really wanted to solve were engineering ones. And so kind of moving in through roles from there. I've been with the DNC since 2017, and I really love it, even when it's a bit nuts.
Mika, yeah, it must be so nuts right now. We're excited to hear more about that as we continue to talk. Carmen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Carmen Sands. I am born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I am currently a senior DevOps engineer for Peak 6 Investments. Peak 6 has a lot of internal startups as well as owns a lot of companies like National Flood Services, cryptocurrencies. They owned a football team at one point, and obviously we do high frequency trading. I work on an internal startup that handles back-end clearing. For the last 11 out of my 12 years, I worked in high frequency trading. So I worked in finance. Believe it or not, I took no finance classes in college. I didn't like finance at all, but ended up in it mainly for the problems that we need to solve. Like you have to go super fast, and we had to think about hardware and software requirements. And now that everything's in the cloud in the last 2 years, now we have different challenges that we need to look at. I got my undergrad and grad at Loyola here in Chicago, and I'm also currently a PhD student at DePaul, working on American Sign Languages, Sign Language with avatars, as well as trying to see if our avatar can do Mexican Sign Language, and there is a difference, Mexican and Spanish, as well as there's British, Greek, and Swiss German. And I work with a group there in a cohort. So besides DevOps, I also obviously know how to do some software engineering as well, so yeah.
We have a very exciting panel for you all today. Cicely, would you like to? You are our manager on the panel, so we're very excited to hear from you.
My name is Citlali. I was born and raised in Mexico City. I moved to the U.S. about 15 years ago. I worked for about 5 years in Mexico. I was actually working at the central bank over there, you know, in the trading room and doing all that exciting stuff. I studied computer science, so that, it was always very clear to me I wanted to be an engineer. I love, realizing how things work and figuring things out. Not so good at memorizing things, so it was easier for me to just, figure things out. One thing that drove me to technology, I still remember, growing up back in the day, like seeing all those terminals with green text and everything. I really wanted to understand what happened behind the scenes. And the other thing is how technology shapes our lives and how we can make a difference. So, throughout my career, I ended up in security. So right now I'm a director of engineering at Splunk. And it's super amazing to see how data is so powerful and how we can do so much good with it. So, super excited to be here and, I learn a lot every day. And, in the chat that we had earlier, I was super excited to be in the same panel as, Mika, Carmen, and you, Chris. It's just so awesome.
Thank you. And we'll get down to it. So today is the Career Growth Day for Techqueria. So I know there are a lot of different things that we talked about in prepping for this, ladies. So where would you like to begin? Do we want to talk about mentorship? Do we want to talk about benefits? Or do we want to talk about career trajectories? Who would like to start?
I can take a stab at it, I guess. As you mentioned, right, I'm the manager in the team, and sometimes it's a little interesting. I remember transitioning, as you grow in your career and figure out, where you end up, the opportunities you have. Of course, it takes a lot of hard work, and sometimes you don't really know what the next step is, right? So it's a matter of finding your own opportunities and trying. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So failure is also part of the journey, right? And even there are some trade-offs, I can tell you from my perspective from management, and I'm sure Mika and Carmen have like even nicer experiences on the tech part, but turning to management, to be honest, the programmer in me died a little bit, right? Like having to give up that coding and like, oh my God, but I'm not going to be able to build, software anymore and that sort of thing. But at the same time, the impact and a big thing for me is that impact, right? And then as a manager, being able to not only build software with a team of people. So there's no option. You have to be part of a team. It's no longer me or I. It's like we. And even that impact on people and on helping growing other people's careers, right? Helping them, ask some questions or advocate for them or, all of that, how it falls into place. It's super exciting to me.
So I definitely can go next about at least like transitioning. For me, I kind of knew somewhat quickly that I wanted to work in tech, although I thought I was going to be doing digital strategy, like I mentioned, and something a little bit less actually technical. And for me, the transition was kind of between industries. I mentioned, and actually a lot of the engineering team and the tech team as a whole at the DNC are from private sector. And then we move into work that looks like the work we're doing now, political tech. There's also obviously a nice healthy contingent of people from ex-feds, so working for organizations like 18F or other political campaigns as well. A lot of that is represented. But for me, it was kind of figuring out where I could take a skill set that everyone pretty much agrees is like very valuable and in many cases fairly expensive, and like kind of actually use it for what I think is good and for like promoting my values and like kind of getting to a point where I am not just valuable as an engineer, but like I am taking those skills and I am creating value for like my community. And I started out volunteering for a candidate who was running for Illinois governor. And so that was like my volunteering role first. And then that's how I kind of moved into this role. But that was because I wanted to like make Illinois better. And then from there, found a way to kind of move into like purpose-driven tech work. And I don't know that I am planning on finding anything else like this. It's pretty great to kind of be able to do something you love, solve the problems you really want to solve, but like know you're making this like really, really meaningful difference.
So I can go in regards to career growth. So one of the things that I think I had trouble with was trying to figure out where I fit in the scheme of technology. So everyone thinks of like something that Mika mentioned in our talks is like, you always look for the FANG companies like Facebook, Apple, Amazon. But in reality, we have all these other companies that are just as good in what you're trying to do. And you're trying to find not only a place to fit in the technological sense of like you're as an engineer, but a place where you feel like you make a difference. And so I had like a double, like I have a dichotomy of my life where I've been an engineer for 11 years, but I'm in finance. So like the goal of finance is you work in money to make money. So how do you make a difference, right? So I've always been in finance for 11 out of 12 years. So I was trying to find an outlook of like, how can I grow as a person? I'm growing in my career as an engineer. I went from a regular engineer to a senior engineer. But how can I help build my community, not just within my company if there's another person of color or another woman engineer, but how can I give back to my community? So I decided to start teaching, and I think teaching is another career path that people forget about as an engineer. Teaching others, not just at your job, but teaching somewhere else, right? So I was thinking to myself, what can I do? So I went back to my alma mater and decided to part-time teach. And all that I was missing, I feel like in my life as not just being an engineer, but giving back to my community came into teaching. So I started teaching, and then I realized I like teaching so much, I want to be a full-time teacher. So I'm going to go for my PhD. So after not being in school for 10 years, I decided to go back to school, even though I was the one teaching and now I have to be taught. It was really awkward. So I think people forget that you don't have to just go to FANG companies. There's finance, there's hospital sector, there's medical sector, and they pay just as well and give you just as much the personability to do something and to make a difference. And if you feel like the job that you're at is really technical and you like it, but you feel like you're still not giving back, that's where volunteerism comes in. I think Nika mentioned that as well. And even though technically I was volunteering, I got another job. It reinvigorated me for me to be like, I'm giving back to the community I came from, which was Loyola at the time. So I think that that career growth can be multifaceted. You might have two careers at the same time, and that's totally okay too.
Talk a bit more about it's all the same tech. A lot of times when Latinos go into tech, they're like, oh, I have to go to Facebook or Amazon or Google. Can we spend a little more time on that? The idea that there's more out there and it's good.
I mean, definitely for me, I spent part of last year speaking at conferences and going to a couple. And I think one of the things I heard the most was like, oh, the DNC has engineers. It's like, yes, we also have data scientists and product people, and it's where we have technical products, data products. And then the second thing that I think was somewhat surprising is that which again I also found kind of interesting that it was even a surprise, was oh, we're working with the same stack everyone else is. At least in terms of the application engineers, we're working in Python, we're working in JavaScript, React, basically. These are not, and these are things that these are not new or kind of, these are pretty standard at this point. And they're also something that people will have a lot of familiarity with, so that our hiring pool can be pretty wide. It's not a very specific set of languages or stacks or technologies. But also that helps us be really, it kind of helps us make sure that even when every 4 years, a lot of things will change, that the technology will kind of still be there and still be somewhat understandable to the people who come after us. That's a big, sustainability is huge and documentation is huge for us. And so the tech is in fact the same everywhere. You're gonna learn how to do the things I just mentioned, or how to work with the tools that we work with, or that everyone works with, no matter where you're working. And so that I think means that the opportunities really open wide up to kind of think about where you want to make your career. It's not just about working just with tech or for a tech company anymore. It's not just HP and IBM anymore. It's you're using tech to do something else with it. What is the other thing that you think you want to do with it?
And Citali, you're doing some really cool things with tech at Splunk, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So right now I'm in the cloud security space. And again, we, of course, Splunk, we consider ourselves the data to everything platform, right? And that applies, not only to Splunk, but everywhere. I absolutely agree with Mika. It's, of course,
isn't it awesome that you get to do what you love while making a difference right outside? It's beyond tech or beyond software or code. It's like, how does that make a difference in people? In my case, it's security oriented. So it's very real. You have threats and, lots of things that you keep hearing all around, and how we can detect those things and protect our assets, being able to respond and prevent bigger incidents from happening. So that's, super, super inspiring.
Carmen, I'd really love to hear more about how you're using tech with the ASL lab.
So right now, what we're doing in the American Sign Language Avatar Lab, it's called like that because that was our primary focus at the time. What we're trying to do is bridge the gap between the hearing and deaf cultures. And when we say deaf, we mean with a capital D, because it is a culture and a community within its own. That's something that people tend to not realize, that when there's a difference between a lowercase and a capital. The lab started like in the 90s, so it was like straight up Java and like all on Windows, and it runs on one big computer, so it was a lot. And right now, because of my DevOps experience, what they're trying to do is make it not be so like, let's pass a file around and get it to work, to like, let's try to get this avatar used more in a global sense. Like they've been trying to do that for a while with different universities. So right now, the tech stack is mainly like 3ds Max that we use in order to create the avatar. They created a Python generator, so a lot of the backend's Python, and then we have a MySQL database in order to keep data about our signs. A lot of the sign language that is done is auto-generated, and then we start tuning it the way that we can. But what we try to do is take motion capture data and take all the data points, analyze them, and try to create an algorithm with them for the hand gestures, and not just hand gestures. Sign language in general, there's a lot of mouthing depending on what you're using or what language you're using. So like when I say what you're using is depending on the topic that you're talking about. So German uses a lot of mouthing when they do sign language. So the mouthing and the hand movement is very important, just as much as the body movement. There is a lot of body movement, a lot of force, and people think an avatar should just be hands. And in reality, there's just so much more to it. It is your whole body that's trying to communicate what the person is verbally saying. So our tech stack right now is with just basically Python and 3ds Max, and we have some stuff in Maya. And what we're trying to do is instead of having it be an EXE that we just send to different universities, we're trying to put it like on a global cluster and computer for them. We can intercommunicate with other universities, one in Greece, one in France, and one in Germany. So that would be Amazon is what we're using right now, Amazon Web Services. And because I come from that DevOps background, now they're like, great, we can use you. Like, help us make this more global. So we've been using Amazon Web Services for that. So the tech stack is broadening, it's growing. It's a group of us, it's a group effort. But they're definitely utilizing my background from finance and high frequency trading to make sure that our avatar can run quickly and effectively globally.
Thank you, Carmen. We had a question from Gabriela in the session Slack. She kind of wants to get more of an idea of how you ended up where you currently are. Like, do you apply? Do you get referrals? Does a recruiter reach out? How have you found your jobs in tech, since you're all very senior in tech? How have you found them?
So I definitely mentioned this when I spoke earlier. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the thing I mentioned earlier with my current job, I had been working in tech as an engineer for about 6 years or so, maybe a little less than that. And I had decided to volunteer. It was 2017, and I was very angry. And so some friends, I gathered up some friends as well, eventually, once I started working with this gubernatorial campaign, and started working as basically the tech team, and eventually became the tech director. And political campaigns are really fascinating kind of little greenhouses for you to suddenly find yourself in charge. There's a lot going on, and there's not that many people to do it. And you're on a pretty easy to notice timeline. for pretty much everything that has followed me into the job I have now. And it's all very like fast paced, and everything you're doing is very like meaningful. Like everything, you're kind of getting a lot out of what you're putting into it. You know, you help set up like SMS texting program, and suddenly like 400 to 500 people show up to an event, when that event normally we only really thought it would be like a couple hundred. Like that's the kind of thing you can see a lot in those kinds of volunteering, but it's the same thing for any kind of like nonprofit. Like all of these organizations are doing such great work, and they're so resource strapped, and they're usually dealing with some really old tech, where if you spent like 3 months just like helping them sort out even just like a mailing list, like not only is that going to live forever, but it's going to make the difference for things like their fundraising and their future volunteer like outreach and things like that. So I actually moved from my job in like working at a marketing agency to, it was a cold application. And then I've actually had 2 friends join me at the DNC. So then it became a referral situation. And so that is kind of a little bit like, if you want to move into an industry, especially something like politics, like volunteering, especially, or like an outside of like an actual day-to-day job experience, is a really good way to basically show that like, obviously I can do this. And I am interested in seeing how this can go further.
I can also talk about like that specific thing. So I did the stereotypical route. I did computer science as my undergraduate degree, but that was like the only degree Loyola had. There was no information systems, there was no network security, there was no nothing. This was like 2003, so that just gave away my age, right? So when I did that, our professors were really cool about getting people to come to speak to our classes. So one of our professors had the CEO of a high frequency trading firm come into our class to talk to us. And that professor always told me, don't be afraid to just go up to someone and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I need a job. Like, that's literally what he told me to do. So at the end of class, I went, hi, my name is, blah, blah, blah. I am graduating this year. Do you have any open positions? Obviously I said it nicer, right? And he gave me his card and I applied. And it was for a software engineering role, entry level in their libraries group, to make the library for their trading applications. And I got interviewed by a couple of people from different teams, and for operations, for like a trading team that needed a developer, and then the job that I actually applied for, to work on their libraries, to work as a software engineer. The person that interviewed me just asked me these engineering questions, like what is a mutex? What is a thread lock? How well do you know Java? Do you know how garbage collection works? Like at the time, I'm just graduating, and I don't know if I froze or if I didn't give sufficient answers to some of the questions. And some of them I blatantly didn't know and said I didn't know. And he told me right in my face, like, thank you for your time, but I think you should leave. This company's not a good fit for you. And when he said that, I was like, what am I going to say? I said, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And as I was leaving, he stopped the elevator, and this feels like a scene from a movie, to be honest. And he's like, actually, someone who previously talked to you before me wants to talk to you again. Like, he was extremely surprised that someone still had interest in me. And when I went back to talk to this other person, he's like, talk to so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. And then after that, that same guy who wanted to talk to me was like, I want to make you an offer right there and then, after I was blatantly just like said I shouldn't be here. And I told him, I'm like, you do realize I got those questions either incorrect or weren't sufficient answers for this dude. And they're like, yeah, I don't care about that. What matters to me is that even though your software engineering skills are fairly new and you're kind of about it, your other skills as a tinkerer, someone who looks at problems, someone who investigates, someone who likes hardware, all the other little attributes and the things that were actually on my resume that mattered, someone paid attention to and gave me an opportunity. So to me, your career growth may sometimes feel like it's, falling down because someone didn't believe in you or didn't see you for who you are. And then another door opens for you, maybe even the same place that says, we like you because we actually cared about your resume and asked you what you're looking for. And I think that that's a good lesson to learn, because it's very difficult when you're, you're so dismayed when you're a Latina woman in tech, so just take that as a great example there.
trying to paste the clapping emoji, Carmen, in the session, but it will not let me. I just want to then physically clap for you because I think that's a really important thing to know. Sometimes people will be like, no, but other people will be like, yes. And I think you have a really, really great experience that everyone here should think about when they go into a situation. You will get no's, but that yes may be literally the other person who just interviewed you.
It happened on the same company. One thought I was horrible and one person thought I was like amazing. So.
How about you, Sathali? How have you gotten your jobs?
So it's been a combination, and again, the other thing, the very real thing is you have to face all these things, right? It's not always easy, and something we were talking about the other day. It's like it may sound easy or like, oh my God, this is so inspiring, but at the same time, there has been a lot of failure along the way, right? Like from the super, awful jerk saying that you don't belong here, you have to go, right? There's been a lot of those. As you start sharing, like, oh, I wanted to study a master's abroad, right? And people were like, why would you think that, anybody would take you, right? Like, do you really think you can? Like, maybe you should, you should not try. Like, that's too hard type of thing, right? And I'm pretty sure all of you guys and people in the panel have, have experienced that, right? So it's a matter of, why not, right? I want to change career. I want to go explore this. Like, why not? And along the way, you will fail. I can almost guarantee you that somebody's going to say you're not good enough, or somebody's going to say you're doing a horrible job. Like, things can, fall into pieces. But I think it's through that, take all the lessons and just use it to come back, right? And come back stronger. And yes, you'll make mistakes and you learn from them and then you keep going, right? I think there's a lot of perseverance that has to happen along the way, right? And sometimes, you have to volunteer. Of course, it's hard, right? As you are graduating and you don't have money, and now how am I going to pay for rent? So it's not that easy, right? Like, oh yeah, go volunteer and work for free. But if you want to try something, that's one way. The other thing that I'm reading in the comments is, networking, and that's what you were asking at the beginning, right? Like networking, applying. I think you're gonna have to apply. And, personally, I had to apply to a bunch of places many times, many different times to get in, right? So it's not that the first one just goes through, but just don't give up and keep working and stay true to what you really want, right? Don't let anybody else tell you that you can't, because you can.
Stay on that note, since Athali just brought up the question. So this is kind of a combine from Anna, Eileen, and Patricia to all of you. How do I know when I'm ready to apply to a full-time software role? How do I get that first position? And especially in times of COVID, how do I network?
I think the fact that like people are here, that's like a good start. I personally have found a lot of support actually in different like Slack groups. So like in Techqueria and like other ones, there's a Chicago-based one that I really love and is like a lot of friends. You do still need that human connection, even if you can't like physically see humans. And beyond that, those kinds of connections are really important. They are how, at the end of the day in the campaign, I found like more people to help with the campaign when I was on that. And how I try to find people to like help. I'm at this point, again, like a senior software engineer. So I'm looking for people to kind of mentor if they want, and have been doing things like that through like Code 2040 and other like networking. And so that's something that I'm trying to do, just like outreach for, just because it's something I think is really important. But beyond that, like any sort of groups or events, even virtual ones, is a really good start. You tend to find out about things when you go to things. That's true in virtual events and in real life. And so that's in terms of like knowing when to start looking, I definitely think like my first job that I got that like a developer was in my title. Like I was just like that the days when I was doing more digital strategy that I noticed like the sun suddenly went down and like, I don't know if I'm gonna get my train home, or the days where I was coding. And so then I just kind of decided like, okay, I kind of want to just do that all the time. Like, can I do that all the time? And I definitely was really fortunate to have a job and then be looking for a job. That's like a different situation than maybe a lot of people find themselves in, especially students, or especially that first time job. But that, I think, really allows you to kind of be a little pickier. But I always think it's kind of a numbers game. I interview pretty terribly, which is maybe why I stay at places for a very long time. And for me, I realize like the 6th interview I go on, even if it's not a place I'm like super pumped about, it is better than the first one I go on. And so it is a situation where it's like a skill that you have to, you know, actually work at. You know, you're gonna get somewhat of the same questions. You're gonna get somewhat of the same jerks maybe. And you just kind of get to a point where like things don't faze you as much. It's easier to say things like, I don't know, or you're just better prepared. And I think that's something too, like going on a lot of interviews. I know that sounds super stressful, but it's one of the best ways to actually practice.
Yeah, going into a lot of interviews, you know, I think like asking when you're ready, like when you're a junior and a senior in college, or if you're heading towards the end of your boot camp, I'd say when you're ready. It's kind of like, when are you ready to get married if you decide to get married, or when are you ready to start a family? Like, I mean, I don't think there's ever like a good time, and towards closer to the end, maybe, of whatever that end is. Honestly, my resume, when I applied to that job where they're like, no, go away, and then they're like, yay, come work with us, I literally had ResNet, which was like the nerdy people who fix your computer at school, lifeguarding, and then like a small internship at a PR firm doing IT, like nothing relevant to software engineering, but like IT stuff. But yeah, my degree was going to be in software engineering. So even though my beginning resume, I bust that one out all the time to remind myself how far I've gone. I still got hired at a place that was like super important in Chicago finance. And it had lifeguarding, ResNet, and like degree to be done in 2003, like, or 2008. Like, you need to realize that you just have to put yourself out there, and you're going to get a lot of those jerks, like Mika says. And I think it's just as stressful as it is, you're going to start picking up on patterns. Like, they're always going to ask this question for Java. They're always going to ask, what's the difference between a set and a list? What's the difference between an array and a dictionary? They're always going to ask those same questions. What's the Fibonacci sequence? Whatever, right? They're going to ask you those same questions over and over again. And it's just a matter of practicing how you answer them. And then you start getting that rhythm. I'm a horrible interviewing person. Like, I'm horrible at interviewing. So I feel you, Mika. It's like, no.
Cicely, can you tell us, as a manager director interviewing people, what do you look for?
So it's more about the actual knowledge and more about the ability to figure things out again. Because, you know, of course, somebody coming out from school, and even I could tell you, like, on a day-to-day, it's not that it matters that you know how to program or you know this function or something, right? That's something that you could even Google. It's more like, okay, we have this huge problem, like, you know, production is down. What do we do now, right? And go and try to figure out and see how you, like, it's very cheesy, and they always recommend, like, in all these books, cracking the coding interview and those type of thing, is like think out loud. But it's true, because then you see how the bulbs start lighting up in people's minds. And as you ask some textbook question, like, it's better to just come with your own way of solving it, rather than just reciting the, oh yeah, these A, B, C, D, right? It's more, or even something that happens very often is people ask the textbook question, and then you throw in a wrench in there, like, okay, now change instead of this, that. And that's how you can tell when people can really like swim and like figure it out, right? It's no longer like I memorized the answer. It's okay, given the knowledge that I have, I'm going to apply it to to solve this totally unexpected thing. And I think that's you know that determines, it's not only like getting the job is just the first step, right? It's now being in the job and being successful, because it's those things that happen every day. Because every day, it's every day something new happens. That's one of the fun parts about software, right? Like never a dull moment. Always, things happen and now, okay, how do we go and solve it? That's even what makes things fun, I would even argue, right? When you join a job and you're able to contribute and to, move the needle, I think that keeps the fire going even.
That's something that I agree with Sitali. Like I really don't people, and I'm sure you all agree. The background of where you get your like your coding your skills or what have you. Like it doesn't matter to me if you went to University of Chicago or if you went to a city college or if you went to a boot camp or you learned on your own. Like to me, what matters is how can you answer this question. It doesn't have to be the correct answer. What matters is how you think. Think out loud, like Citali says. That matters to people when they interview you. A good example is I interviewed 2 University of Chicago students. One had a B in a class and one had an A+. The one with the A+ answered all the textbook questions correctly, but then threw a wrench in there, like Citali says, and they froze. But the B student started thinking out loud and was asking questions. And that's what mattered to me, because even though they're asking you these questions, you're probably not going to do any of what they're telling you in your interview. And you're going to end up doing something completely different. Like, oh, you know how to code? Oh, in Java, I don't care. You're going to do Ruby today and you're going to figure out why this website's down. And be like, okay, but you got the job. So now you have to, they saw how you were trying to figure out a problem. Now they expect you to figure out this problem. And I think that's something that resonates with all of us. Like they asked us all these questions and they asked us how we thought, but that was not exactly what we're doing. But we're still doing tech because we love solving problems, right?
A great question from somebody else with an amazing name that's, similar to Chris. Her name is Crystal, and she wants to know, so we're talking about being the interviewee, but how do we tell when we're interviewing if the environment is right? Like, how do we use that interview to actually gauge whether or not this is going to be a good place for me to work?
I definitely am not a big fan of interview formats that feel like you have to win. Like there's like, this is kind of a thing that I think a lot of like big tech companies do, where it's like they only have so many, they're doing like a big wave of hiring and they only have so many positions they're hiring for. And so you're kind of walking in there like studying like it's a standardized test and not necessarily able to at least do the thing that I really like to see in an interviewee, which is like bringing like their authentic self and like, is this person going to be good to work with? We are working a lot right now. I am spending more time with my coworkers at the moment than with my partner that I live with. And so that is something where we are very interested in, are you a very good problem solver, even if what you're trying to solve is a problem that you have never seen before in a language that you have never worked in a product that has not been updated since 2016, and that you're going to be that flexible and that you're going to be someone who can kind of adapt to the problem at hand, and maybe even bonus points for like having to figure out a system while it's actively on fire, because that's something we end up having to do a fair bit. And that's something that I think everyone has had to do in every kind of tech industry role. So for me, again, the important thing I'm always trying to find about, is this person going to be like a good adaptable fit? But also like, is this person going to be like a really good, interesting, someone who's adding some sort of value to the team? And when you're interviewing, when you're being interviewed, I mean, this is a cliche, but it goes both ways. I personally like to see other like individuals of marginalized gender in the room, especially if I'm doing an engineering interview. I personally like to see other people of color in the room, especially if I'm doing an engineering interview. And that's again, interviewing will kind of get you to the place where like, oh, I would rather have this kind of interview experience. You have a little bit of power to kind of mention, like, I would rather do like a homework assignment than whiteboard or something like that. And that's something you would really only get if you ask and if you apply. Most places will be a little more flexible than not, but it just feels like a big step to like presumptively try. But if people are hiring, they're hiring, like they really need to find the right person for this role. And So it's in their best interest to kind of meet you where you are.
Great question from Adriana, and she wants to be more technical, but she's not currently in a technical role. Any advice for showing them that she can be technical so she could eventually move into that software engineering role?
I can probably give a little quick tidbit on that. I had a coworker, project manager, and knew some coding but not much, and was really worried if she can try for a technical role. One of the things that I know is that whoever your manager is, it's very important that managers should always advocate for you, right? Regardless of what your role you're in. And I know Sitali, who's the manager, does, I'm sure, advocate for who works under her, right? And if you're comfortable with your manager to say that you would like to venture out of your role currently and try to do coding, one thing is trying to prepare yourself onto what are you trying to do? And she was trying to say, well, we program in Ruby, so I'm taking Ruby and Udemy. I'm like, okay, do you know what is our stack? And so then she was going to talk to me and to another person to learn about our stack. And then any questions she had, we were preparing her for. And then how do I go about to talk to my manager about considering me doing some work half here and some work here in order to transition to me in. But that's if you have a place and a culture where your manager advocates for you and you have coworkers that are willing to help bring you on. And not a lot of places may be like that. And that's something that you have to ask within yourself, like who look for the helpers, as they say, right? So who are the helpers in your community at work, right? Who are the ones that are willing to give that hand, but also help you make that decision of when do I talk to them? So I that's just like from that experience I had with my ex-coworker. I hope that's helpful.
I have
to that is also, oh, sorry, just really quick. So yeah, absolutely. Like it's the other thing that we sometimes forget. Absolutely, your manager needs to advocate for you, and if it's also taking matters into your hands in the sense that you bring it up, right? Like I think as Mika was saying, even from the interview, once you have a job, it's like it doesn't hurt to ask. And that's also how you can gauge how much your manager or your team is willing to, to support you or not, right? And there may be some additional work you need to do, or even let's say, as an example, if you're on program management and you want to jump to engineering, see how you can bring tech into what you're doing, right? So it doesn't feel to your team or your managers that now you're not going to get the work done. It's just showcasing how your skill set or additional interest can come in. And then that's how you are already showing results, right? It's going to be much easier for somebody outside to get you under their wing and say, okay, let's, fuel that even further. But absolutely, take it, make sure you are driving your career and your goals and look for the helpers. I love it.
I really like this question from Carla. What are you all doing to bring and help others like you, minority, women, etc., into and grow in the field? I am going to answer this one. I noticed when I was interviewing is like a lot of things that help you interview just cost a lot of money. That's not always accessible for people. So I started this website called Dev Inclusion Giveaways, where every month I'm going to basically raffle off some of these things. Like everybody wants interview cake, everybody wants leak code stuff. So that's one of the ways I'm doing it. And I'm hoping that the women and anyone else on this call can eventually benefit from this. In talking with Carmen and Mika and Tislani, I know they do a lot of mentoring besides general volunteering. So I'll let you guys take over this question now.
So for me, again, I mentioned I try to find opportunities to volunteer, but also to mentor. I also mentioned that I do like doing conference speaking and things like this, because I have also been in the industry for a fair bit of time. And definitely when I was starting, I was not seeing a lot of people who look like me up on a conference stage. And so that is something that has meant a lot, not just because I'm willing to do it, and at this point I've been doing it long enough that like it doesn't scare me as much as it used to. But that's because of practice. But also like I know that for me, I'm trying to make sure that like it's not necessarily just, although obviously primarily for like other Latinas, other women, individuals of marginalized gender identities, like also other people of color, to see somebody like them up on the stage, but it's also to normalize it generally for everyone else. And kind of seeing someone perform expertise is really important to kind of like moving the needle on kind of that representation being something that everyone just, like presumes should be there, will be there, understands needs to be there. And so that for me has been really, really important. I have like a Calendly, and I'll try to like put things in my schedule, not in the fall on even numbered years, but any other time. And really like kind of give advice, things that I've learned the hard way. I think everyone, especially once you get going on in the industry, has obviously a couple not fantastic stories, and there are things I wish I knew. And so I'm happy to tell people things I wished I had known so that maybe they have a little bit of an easier time than I did. But also I'm still here. And so that is also something that I make a point of trying to, be a representative very visibly at every opportunity. But I definitely want to hear from Carmen and Citlali.
Carmen?
Okay, so when I started, there was barely like, I went to Grace Hopper and I met Latinas in tech, and I swooned over how many amazing Latinas there were, because I never saw a Latina engineer like ever. That was the first time I met people who look like me and identify like me, be engineers, and I was just like over the moon. And obviously as time progressed, there's Techqueria, Latinas in Tech in Chicago. There's Chicas that you see on channel 66 and 44 in Chicago promoting Chicas, and I started joining all these groups and trying to do conferences like these to say, we're here, we want to be the people that we didn't see. And that's why I also went back to school, because I had no female professors except one, and then she left to go to math, and then they hired one as I was leaving. And there was no Latina engineers or Black engineers at all at my university. So when you're in a place where you see that that's not there, you try to fill that need, that whole be the change you want to be. So I was like, my alma mater has no one like me. I'm going to go and be that person. And I think that we've all done that at one point. So if you see a need somewhere and you want to fill it, especially a place that help you grow, then go back and, be that change, be that role model, just like Mika said.
Citlali?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Definitely, be that person, right? If you don't see somebody, you are that person, right? I don't think we should hold ourselves back, like, oh, I'm Latina, I don't, the tech person usually looks like this or they are like that. Like, no, I'm one of them. I'm just, just as good or even better than many other people, regardless of, I was born here, or, my color is, or I look like that. Like, just, really believe in yourself, believe that you are already there. It's not something, also the other thing is that it's not a goal. It's not that, okay, we want to get there. No, we are here already. And not only, us that we are in the panel, but everybody in the audience, right? Just the fact of being here, the fact of asking these questions, wherever, phase in your life that you're studying, you have a job, you have your own company, whatever it is, it's us, right? Like, and this is super awesome to have the community, and it becomes even super fun, right? Like, have somebody that understands you, or like you can tell jokes. Like, that's been my biggest thing. Like, I love joking and this and that, and I try to translate them and nobody gets them, and it's like kind of frustrating. So just, use that community and just enjoy being who you are. That's, that would be it.
I was like, Citlali, tell us your joke. You can tell us. We will get it.
I cannot think of any, unfortunately, but yeah.
Okay. Well, you have about 3 minutes while something else is on. Before we say goodbye, we're going to come back to you for a joke. So think about it. Alrighty, so how do we become those people that we didn't see? How do we get better? We do this by learning, by reading, by listening, by consuming knowledge. And Scribd is here today to tell us about how we can access knowledge from them.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas, and I manage the recruiting team here at Scribd.
My name is Isabella. You can call me Bella, and I work on the HR team, specifically with people programs and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, we want to come here today, give you a brief introduction about Scribd, but then also answer any questions for you that would be helpful in interviewing your development, your growth, and anything in general that you would like to know.
Trisha, what was your question? Write it in there. I think Isabella and Lucas would love to answer. How do I interview for X thing?
Yes, absolutely. Just to kind of, again, give a little bit of oversight and information about Scribd, we're about 300 people right now. Currently, we have our headquarters in San Francisco. We also have offices in Phoenix, Toronto, New York, and Amsterdam. And we also have a pretty extensive remote employee population as well, too. Somewhere around like 18% of those 300 people are remote and virtual employees based in locations in the United States, Canada, and a few even in Europe as well, too. We have over 1.4 million subscribers. They've read over 2 billion pages in the last year, and we are really the world's largest digital library. One thing that a lot of people might not know is we've been around for quite a long time as well, too. We were founded in 2007 as a simple way to publish documents. And again, it's evolved into the world's largest library that it is today, changing the way the world reads. A little more information about the product. It's, a lot of people like to think of us as like the Netflix of reading. What it really is it's the best of the written word all in a single app, personalized for every reader. So the best library of audiobooks, ebooks, articles, documents with one subscription service so that you can access great content from any device at any time. And we are also worldwide as well, too. We've been accessed and used in every single country in the entire world. And because of which we're working to build an organization that's as diverse as our users to be able to support and represent all those people from around the globe that are using our product.
And at Scribd, we're all characters with character. So that means celebrating people from all backgrounds and creating a culture where everyone feels they truly belong. We work every day towards having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplace here at Scribd. And I'm going to speak about some of the programs and initiatives we've implemented that help us do just that. So next slide. So like I said, we believe diversity, equity, and inclusion need to be weaved throughout our workplace and our internal and external community. In the workplace, this doesn't only mean through hiring, but also retaining our current population. So we have 4 pillars that we currently focus on to make sure DE&I is weaved throughout our foundation, the foundation of our culture: recruit, track, train, and support. In recruiting, our DE&I efforts start as soon as we connect with you all as candidates. We make sure that all candidates have a fair and equitable experience from their first interview through the first day on the job. And we do this through different programs like a talent philosophy website for people to go to learn how to interview, hiring best practices. We've updated all our job descriptions to have neutral, non-gendered language. And we've developed strategic partnerships with Techqueria and Jobwell, which is a career advancement platform for Black, Latinx, and Native American students and professionals. Next, we actively track our progress across all initiatives from hiring to attrition, so we understand which areas or programs need more attention. So we're creating an executive dashboard right now to keep pulse on different metrics across the company and to continuously report out to our leadership team. We've also set hiring goals, company-wide DE&I OKRs, and we have candidate demographic and interview surveys in Lever, our applicant tracking system, to help us gauge diversity of our candidate pool and funnel and to track candidate experience. Next, we have train, because learning and development is very important to us, and we make it a priority for all employees to learn and build upon the same DE&I foundation so we can all grow together. We have a really great partnership with a company called Paradigm, which is a DE&I training company, where we've had different sessions throughout the years, such as a listening circle, specifically after the murder of George Floyd, to give employees a platform to connect and share their feelings and thoughts. Inclusive leadership training, inclusive hiring training for hiring managers in our recruiting team, and company-wide training across 3 modules: remote inclusion, fostering belonging, and practicing allyship. And then last, we have support, which helps us create a community that is supportive and fosters psychological safety for all employees, customers, and authors. We also create safe spaces to share and learn from each other based on our diverse stories, ideas, and talents. So we have employee resource programs. We'll do inclusive educational newsletters and celebrations. We have, right now, we're actually having a September allyship challenge to help build that skill. And we do different things on LinkedIn, like employee spotlights and other different posts to highlight our employees. And our efforts don't stop there. We have a lot of stuff coming up that we're super excited about. Interview and hiring processes, revamping those to continue to reduce bias. We're creating our first code of conduct as a company and behaviors that we will add into our performance review process. And then, of course, the benefits and perks audit to make sure all offerings are inclusive to as many groups and identities as possible. So now I'll pass it back to Lucas.
Great. So yeah, I mean, and we're hiring across the board. I have links here for our careers page, learning more about some of the things that Bella spoke about in regards to our culture, D&I efforts, and just really what life at Scribd is like, as well as links to our tech blog, just so you can get even more information about us. One of the questions earlier was about opportunities at Scribd for non-traditional backgrounds. I really like this question just because, I mean, lots of times we're actively looking for people that have different backgrounds. We really see that as a massive value within the organization, especially if you're looking at things like having innovative approaches and different perspectives on things. It really behooves an organization to have people that have a very vast and broad experience to draw from. So not only is that not a negative, that's actually really a positive. Again, those diverse experiences are what makes us great. I would say just as much as possible, really try and, you know, take some time on each one of the jobs that you're interested in, look over the job description, pull out some of like the key bullet points that you think especially resonate well to you, and do your best to reflect on, have your resume reflect some of those bullet points, be it in the projects that you worked on or some of the specific experiences that you gained in that certification or boot camp. Just so you're kind of tailoring it, customizing it to that job as much as possible, and really just demonstrating that, like, hey, I might not have gotten this experience in a computer science degree, or maybe not at my previous employer, but I have direct experience. I solved similar problems in a similar fashion, used similar technologies. Here's how we did it there. I would love to have the opportunity to tell you more about it.
Yeah, and come by our expo booth if you have any other questions. We'll be there right after this, and we can answer more questions and whatever else you want to talk about.
So I'm seeing Cynthia, Patricia, and Catalina. You are going to go to Scribd expo booth after this, is what I'm seeing in there. Right, Isabella? Right, Lucas?
Yes, I'll be there.
Great.
So I'm going to hold you accountable.
We'll see you there.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys. Just as a last wrap up, I would like to give Mika, Carmen, and Citlali a moment to give last thoughts.
So I think the biggest thing, especially because right now a lot of people are thinking about interviewing, they're thinking about taking the next step, figuring out what 2021 is going to look like. I'm sure it'll be a surprise, no matter what we're expecting, considering the year previously, is to kind of think about ways that you can own and set yourself up for success. Specifically, we'll talk about interviewing. It really is important to kind of be able to bring your whole self to an interview. And also be honest about, it feels very scary. I 100% get it, to say things like, I don't know, or to kind of not entirely follow a train of thought that somebody is asking you a question about. And it's not necessarily that you're going to like win this job. Like, you don't win when you do interviews. You are seeing if this is going to be a place you're going to like. And more than one occasions, you might make a mistake in that. I definitely did in one of my first jobs. And then that's fine. You kind of exit and move on and get to a place where you really feel like you found your purpose and like you really belong, which is thankfully where I found that I landed. And so I think that anything you can do, if it's a situation where you are just more on your game in the morning, these are your projects that you can talk for hours about. That you're not super great at the whiteboarding, but you are really good if they give you a problem to kind of go squirrel away with ready access to Google to like come back to them with something that like actually looks probably a lot more like something that they would actually build just with a larger team of people and more time. And so to me, I think that that's really important, is just whatever things you can figure out. And maybe it's because when you interview, you have a couple bad experiences, that you set yourself up really well, is going to be it's going to basically come through. In my interview with the DNC, I thought it was a total long shot. And so I made jokes because I was just like, this isn't going to go anywhere. These people seem nice. And that actually, I think, was helpful because that is actually my personality, is to be a little sardonic and to kind of make snappy jokes. And so that, I think, also was really the thing that maybe might have set me apart as well. And so I just want to make sure people are comfortable and set themselves up well, to the extent that they can own any of that piece for themselves.
Some of the things that I can honestly say, it's a long journey. I think we'll all agree on that. I always, like I said, I looked at the resume I had when I first started, and it was like lifeguard, IT support. I'm barely getting a computer science degree, right? It's not anything that stands out, right? But what makes you stand out could be a cover letter in the beginning, talking about how I mentioned this before, like I have one computer and this is going to be my only computer and I better learn how to fix it, my mom said, because you're not getting another one, right? That set me aside in that interview I did horrible with, because I like tinkering with things. So I ended up being a DevOps engineer. So now I create infrastructure. But I didn't go to school for that. I went to school for literally software engineering, computer science, right? So sometimes you just land in a different place in engineering. And remember, engineering just doesn't mean you're a software engineer. Engineering can be networking, information systems, infrastructure, data science. There's so many subcategories, bioinformatics, augmented reality. Like there's so many. And you shouldn't just think engineering is software engineering. There's so many sub-genres of engineering. And just because you went to school for one thing in engineering doesn't mean you're going to end up there. And I think that like Mika said, you have to kind of just trial and error, figure out like what parts of engineering you may like, or what is it that you really like in the coding or in the development of what you're doing. And it seems lonely at first because you seem like you're the only one there. And at times I felt like that, but it takes community support and growth, and look for the helpers. Sometimes that can be that random teacher who spoke Spanish because his wife's from Latin America and he thought that it was great that you can communicate together. Or it can be that other one lone Latino in class when there's like 50 other people that are there, but he's the only Latino next to you. And then you become great friends. Or it can literally be that other girl that's struggling just as much as you, and at least you guys can work together and bounce ideas off of each other. It's going to take a lot of that to get you to be that manager and to work for the DNC and to be that senior. It takes all those trials and tribulations and failures to get there. And you just have to get back up and go back to your support group and your community, and you'll grow from it.
Yeah, fully agree with what Mika and and also, from it's a process, right? So as long as you are alive, you have every single day to, to adapt, to look for different things. Like, nothing is final. Everything is a process, and you start, you find a job, and that may be your dream job, or maybe that helps you realize that's not exactly, and then you start looking for something else. Like Carmen says, engineering is so broad that we are super lucky that we can apply that anything, right? So we were saying the other day, like in the end, it's the same technology. No matter what, you apply the same concepts, and the same, the same type of issues happen, and you have that chance to just apply it to whatever you feel most inspired in, or anything, right? So just keep doing, keep believing in you. Don't let anybody else tell you that you can't, because you can, and take every day as a new opportunity. Keep exploring.
On behalf of everyone who is in the session, I want to say thank you, Mika, Carmen, and Citlali. You shared your professional, and I feel like a little bit of some of the emotional journey to get you where you are today. So thank you so much. I'm going to applaud because no one else can be heard. So thank you, guys.